It's always been a bit puzzling to me why there aren't more compact seven-seaters like the Mercedes GLB. The only other car that does something very similar is the Land Rover Discovery Sport. But other than that, at a similar price, you're looking at bigger five-seat SUVs like the Audi Q5 or the Mercedes GLC, which to be fair are only a couple of centimetres longer. But it does make a lot of sense for a family to have a smaller car like this that's not got its own kind of postcode, it's so huge, and with those occasional seats that pop up out of the boot. Before we go on to find out if it's any good at filling that niche, don't forget to like the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos. The GLB is available with a variety of efficient petrol and diesel engines, which are definitely the best option if you're after a bit of a common sense compact seven-seat SUV like this. This particular car is the 35 AMG, which gets a four-cylinder, turbocharged, 302 brake horsepower powertrain that you might be familiar with if you know the A35 hot hatch. So definitely not the common sense option, but it does look cool. You get the big wheels, you get that bespoke grille for the AMG, and I mean, I really like that sort of boxy shape that the GLB has anyway. It looks proper old school SUV. Obviously, practicality is critical if you're after a car like this, and the GLB does live up to expectations. When you've got the car with its sort of default 5 seats up, the boot is a really good size. This load lip is a little bit high, I have to say, and there is no storage under the floor because you have these seats, of course. But what you do have is a little cubby there where you can put the parcel shelf, which is really useful because it means when you want to put the seats up, you can stick the parcel shelf in there. So that's really neat. And I mean, by any standards, that boot is more than big enough for a big chunky buggy. And actually, it's a slightly bigger boot than you get in an Audi Q5 and a BMW X3. There is ample leg and headroom in the middle row of seats for 2 tall adults to get comfortable, and the seats do slide individually as well. But what about those rear seats? Okay. So look, an adult in the back of this car. Let's face it. Oh my goodness, that's not, yeah. So access is maybe not great for an adult, and even when you've got the seats back in front, well, do you know what? You're going to suffer a trip back from the pub in here, actually no problem at all. But anything more than that, I don't think you're going to be terribly comfy. It's a bit dark and a bit cramped and all of that stuff. But that is beside the point because you're going to put the kids back here, aren't you? And they are going to be absolutely fine. So yeah, kids back here, grandparents in the middle, and you're sorted. And like I said, given that the boot's still a good size, it just feels like a really useful, practical thing to have for the odd occasion you need more people in here. This being the AMG model, it gets the full bells and whistles as standard, including these electrically adjustable seats, the panoramic glass roof, 20-inch wheels and LED headlights. I particularly like the Mercedes turbine vents with ambient lighting strip. It's a really smart touch, as is the 10-inch touchscreen. It's an interesting one, this, because the touchscreen itself responds pretty quickly, graphics are lovely, really nice clear screen, but there are so many ways of controlling this system, not just the touchscreen itself, but this laptop style touchpad down here, and also these touchpad sensitive things up here. Actually, to be honest, they're pretty good when you get used to them, but it's just so many different methods of controlling it, it can be a bit overwhelming, so it definitely takes time to get used to it. Once you're familiarised with it, it's not a bad system at all, and it does have all of the features that you'd want, including Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The only thing I'd say is it's a bit annoying it doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay. Now, a compact 7-seat SUV makes sense to me, but one with 302 brake horsepower? Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I mean, let's face it, when you're talking about 48 grand 7-seat SUVs, necessary is a bit different to what you actually want. And we know that people who have kids also want to have fun, and they might want to have fun cars. So I think that's the answer to that, isn't it? And if you're one of those people, well, this definitely lives up to it because it is good fun. So it's a bigger, heavier, longer car than a hot hatch, isn't it? And it does feel like that. You're not going to get the same sort of handling in this that you do with a Golf R, but given the practicality, this thing still handles really well. It's got loads of grip, and you can stick it in sport mode and use this dual clutch 8-speed gearbox, and it's just great fun. The steering has got a really nice weight to it. It does weight up as you go through the sport modes, obviously. More than that as well, the steering wheel itself is really lovely and slim, and I like these big paddles. They're nice and got a snickety feel to it. So you really kind of feel encouraged to use this car and to sort of drive it in quite a spirited fashion, which is really cool. But what I would say is that when you do put it in those sportier modes, you also firm up the adaptive dampers, which are standard on the GLB 35. And to be honest, the ride can get a bit tiring. It gets a bit wearisome when you do have it in those firmer settings. It's not too bad in comfort. And I think, generally, I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for most people looking for this sort of car. So it's fair enough, but yeah, definitely the softer settings are going to be what you want most of the time. In terms of running costs, I think the first thing you've got to say is that the Discovery Sport P300e plug-in hybrid is going to be much cheaper because it's going to give you a useful amount of electric running. But having said that, for the performance you're getting in this, I think the fact that you're going to get, around about 30 mpg, we're seeing just under, that's not bad, is it? And more than that, I know this car costs 48 grand, which is hardly cheap, but for the equipment you're getting, and again, that performance, it's not that bad, is it? Especially given that you're going to pay well over £40,000 for a well-equipped Golf R or A35, let alone A45, or this kind of thing. So you can see how, coming at it from certain angles, the GLB 35 actually feels like reasonable value. And the noise, well, it's quiet enough in comfort mode, but that four-cylinder engine sounds raucous in sportier modes. A bit fake perhaps, but appealingly naughty nonetheless. In essence, this is a very practical 7-seat SUV with the heart of a hot hatch. And speaking as a mum who also really likes fast cars, I totally get the appeal of that. If you are after a 7-seat SUV, but you're not fussed about the fun aspect of the 35, well, the standard version of the GLB is really good, as is the Discovery Sport, I have to say. If you do want the fizziness and the entertainment, and you like the idea of 7 seats occasionally, well, this is about your only option. So it's a good thing that it does it very well indeed. Don't forget to head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars from top-rated dealers.